Mr. President, I rise today to discuss the epidemic of suicide, a growing crisis that has devastated millions of families across our nation. Over the past 8 years, the rate of deaths by suicide in our country has tripled. Let me repeat that. It has tripled. And the problem is particularly severe among young adults. According to the Centers for Disease Control, for youth between the ages of 10 and 24, suicide is now the third leading cause of death. In other words, more of America's youth dies each year from suicide than from cancer, heart disease, AIDS, birth defects, stroke, pneumonia, influenza, and chronic lung disease combined. And this crisis shows no signs of abating. Consider that each day in our nation there are an average of over 5,400 suicide attempts by young people in grades 7 to 12. In my home state of Utah, the statistics are particularly alarming. Every 14 hours, a Utahn commits suicide, resulting in an average of 630 deaths each year. The problem is so acute in Utah now that Utah now has the fifth highest suicide rate in the nation. This troubling trend is particularly pronounced among Utah's youth. Even though Utahns from ages 10 to 17 comprise only 13% of the state population, they represent nearly 23% of all suicide attempts. Suicide is now the leading cause of death among Utah's teenagers. To stem the tide of teenage suicide in Utah, I convened a roundtable discussion in Salt Lake City last December that included community leaders, healthcare professionals, high school principals, and parents from across the state. There we discussed proven methods to destigmatize mental illness, a critical first step in addressing the suicide crisis. We also discussed the links between bullying and depression. In the effort to prevent teen suicide, the effect of bullying cannot be overlooked. A recent study in the Journal of the American Medical Association finds that kids who are bullied are more than twice as likely to consider suicide. In my home state of Utah, dozens of community leaders have drawn attention to the pernicious effects of bullying. Foremost among them is Dr. Greg Hudnall, a nationally recognized expert in suicide prevention. Dr. Hudnall found that between 8 and 12% of all suicides are committed by young people who have been bullied. To discourage bullying and to help our teenagers who are suffering most, Dr. Hudnall has led in the development of Hope for Utah. Hope for Utah is a dynamic peer-to-peer program designed to empower students in groups called Hope Squads. Hope Squads identify warning signs of depression in teenagers and offer help to those in need. Wendy Nelson, the principal of Utah's Syracuse High School, recently told me how Hope Squads have helped students at risk of suicide to connect with therapists that the school has made available on a regular basis. The high school has since partnered with a local community health center for help in addressing the need for help in this particular area. And, of course, the need for mental health professionals in schools. This shortage of mental health counselors is a serious problem, not only in Utah, but in schools across the nation. It's a very, very serious problem.